Hi, my name is Carol Rizzolo, and this is a public service announcement on the state of transportation infrastructure here in Connecticut. As many of us know, we're being presented with two different plans. One plan from the governor and his administration, and another plan from the state GOP. So what I want to point out here is how we all know how important it is that everything be repaired. We're not even a question about it, but we obviously have two different ways that this could be paid for. So in collaboration with several others, and then published under Jackie Keiko's name, I want to read to you a letter called A Bridge Too Far that was published in the Stamford Advocate on Wednesday, April 17th. And it pretty much lays out the arguments for both sides. So, here we go. The Myannis Bridge event at 1:28 a.m. on June 28, 1983. 100 feet of the then 30-year-old Myannis River Bridge collapsed. Many of us remember that tragic moment. That bridge collapse dropped 2 tractor-trailer trucks and 1 car 70 feet down into the river below. 3 drivers were killed, including the driver of the car that was crushed under one of the trucks. A devastating event. The cause of the collapse was the failure of 2 of the bridge's rusted pin and hanger supports. They were deemed to have been the collapse was deemed to have been the result of insufficient inspection resources around the state. It drew national attention, of course, to the problem of deferred bridge maintenance and the state's aging infrastructure. Connecticut infrastructure in 2019, now, in the state of Connecticut, there are 338 bridges that are rated structurally deficient. That means that when we drive over them, the chances of another Myannis River Gorge Bridge problem occurring again are high. The bridges that we have now have an average age of 69 years versus an expected lifespan of 50 years. 4 of these bridges are more than 100 years old. And let me say that again so everyone hears it. 4 of the bridges in Connecticut are more than 100 years old. The average age of all of the bridges in the state is 53 years. And if we look at the roads, 7% of the state roads are rated as poor. Now that's no surprise for those of us who drive on many of those roads often. They're cracks, they're potholes, they're just in terrible shape, and obviously the bridges, many of us also know. We don't climb under the bridges to look, we don't have the expertise to do that. But we rely on the state of Connecticut and their inspections to tell us these things. So what are the facts and choices? Well, we need the amount and kind of investment in transportation infrastructure that tolls could pay for as a shared expense of Connecticut users of the roads and 40% of users from out of state. Now, let me just be clear about that number. Many people have said to us, well, when I stand on the side of I-95, I only see 1 out of 10 cars that are from out of state going by. Now we can debate whether you see 1 out of 10 or 4 out of 10 or 5 out of 10 from out of state going on the interstate. But what we know is that the governor's plan in the tolling intends to charge out-of-state vehicles a higher rate than they do here in Connecticut. So that's one thing to say about it. So the other choice, the GOP plan, would be bonds. The bonds would give 100% of the tab to nutmeggers and a free ride to all out-of-staters whose tolls we pay and whose roads we invest in every time we travel out of state, right? Many of us have driven into Massachusetts, and of course we're paying on the Mass Pike all the time. Their prices of gasoline are less. I know I just sort of took a left turn as far as understanding that, but gas prices in Connecticut are very high, trying to pay for the transportation infrastructure because we don't have tolls. A lot of people in Connecticut drive either to New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts for less expensive gasoline, but we're paying for tolls in those states. We are one of the only states on I-95 in the Northeast Corridor that don't collect money from tolls. So back to our differences in plans. Another difference between the two plans, the tolls plan wouldn't crowd out bonding for investments in our schools and university and in other crucial state infrastructure, universities, plural. The alternative, the GOP prioritized debt scheme, would take money away from our education spending. So this question, while we dither, which of the deficient 338 Connecticut bridges will be the next Mianus River Bridge event. We can't afford another one of these events. We can't afford the loss of life and the tragedy of it. So those are the two options. One, of course, is we do add tolls. Nobody's happy about paying tolls. Nobody's happy about being taxed. Nobody's happy about any of this. But the reality is, for the last 70 years, there have been decisions made by both parties that have essentially left our state in a state of profound budgetary despair. It's a problem. We need to fix it. The question is how. One way, we basically get a 40% off coupon from others who are traveling through the state and helping pay for the roads that they all travel on. The GOP plan lets us borrow more money. We borrow more money, our grandkids have to pay it off. The expense of just debt service is something Connecticut's very familiar with, and we don't need to add more of it. So now you understand both of the plans. Please follow this issue. We understand there are any number of events going on around the state that speak to both of these, but I will really encourage you to consider, if this needs to be paid for, how do we pay for it? We need to do something to fix the problem. Thanks again for listening, and I look forward to the next public service announcement.